This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 FinTech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving FinTech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the FinTech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing FinTech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Europe. Today, the theme is going to be PropTech. We're going to get soon into definitions, but let me first introduce you my co-host today, Francesca Aliverti from Milan. Ciao Francesca, welcome back.
Hello guys, ciao Matteo.
And actually, in the first half of this show, we have a kind of a special guest that could be a host already. She's actually a host of her own podcast. It is almost like a sister or a brother podcast from the US. Dara Tarkovsky, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. We feel like family already.
Indeed. So the theme of this show is something that it is adjacent to FinTech. It has been developing quite steadily in the past, I want to say 3 to 5 years. And now, of course, is one of the sectors that has been impacted super strongly by the crisis. So before getting into, the definitions and the trends and the market, Dara, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're super known in the US, but make yourself known to our auditors in Europe.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. So as Matteo mentioned, my name is Dara Tarkovsky. I am another Provoke host. My podcast, Tech on Reg, really explores the intersection between law, technology, and highly regulated industry, which obviously we're talking about here today. I'm an attorney. Don't hold that against me. I like to think of myself as, a fun lawyer, a cool lawyer, and more importantly, a lawyer who really loves and embraces technology. So I own my own law firm with some partners here in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. And then I also co-founded a RegTech company in early 2019, which basically automates the delivery of legal and compliance advice in a variety of topic areas. So we're not just talking about, FinTech or InsurTech or WealthTech, PropTech fits squarely into that, and really the digital transformation of all highly regulated industries into technology of all shapes and sizes.
Thank you, Dara. So PropTech is, has a lot to do with regulation because, I don't want to spoil the guest of the second part of the show, but one of them will tell the story about her company being called illegal at the beginning because they were doing something like super innovative. But Dara, how do you see the PropTech market in the US? Which trends do you see, and how important is or was for you being a lawyer into sort of catching up with the space?
Well, being a lawyer, for better or for worse, gives you kind of a unique view and perspective on really all industry, and certainly the digitization and automation of all businesses, the real estate industry included, allows for some unique perspective. But you certainly don't need to be a lawyer to sort of appreciate the stress and the struggle of the impact of regulation and government and rules. Lawmakers, I think, both in the United States and abroad, I'm guessing they resist the things that they don't know and they resist the things that they don't understand, because then they have to think really hard about how to write rules that fit it. And that sometimes just takes way too much effort than anyone is interested in providing. So we end up really in many sectors, PropTech included, with this real disconnect between what's happening in reality, what customers and businesses want, and the capability of the technologies, and then how to do that in a quote unquote legal way. In terms of you can stop me if I'm so used to being a host and asking the questions. I'm like very excited that I get to answer somehow.
Go ahead, no worries.
In terms of trends, right? So I think in 2017, 2018, we really started seeing PropTech through the, tokenization and implementation of blockchain in a lot of different sectors, whether that was using it as a vehicle to raise money for real estate projects, whether or not you were viewing blockchain as a way to maybe a more efficient way of recording title. The title transfer and, reconciliation process is long and painful because our real estate records exist in old paper and dirty old boxes and warehouses that nobody knows where they are. And I think especially rings true in Europe a lot. I've spoke with a lot of my counterparts in the UK sort of about their real estate struggles. And the same here is true in the US. So it's all about, streamlining processes that are old and antiquated and difficult and making them less difficult through the use and implementation of technology. That's really how I'd sort of sum it up.
I want to say something, Fra, before you ask the next question. Actually, a couple of sort of behind the scenes. So one is that, I see the two next guests sort of, nodding heavily,
Laughing.
especially one of them, when you were talking about, decomplexifying, documents and, dusty stuff in old boxes. And this is sort of a great anticipation for the dialogue that is actually coming next.
I love when people nod their heads. It means that I'm getting something right.
Yeah, exactly. And something that is even sort of funnier, let's share with our, auditors something like of the behind the scenes. So usually, what happens is that us sort of host, we use a sort of a chat to kind of agree on what question is coming next. But actually, Dara is so used of, to this podcast that she doesn't even wait for us to ask a question. She just read the chat and sort of start answering to the question that, we were telling between Francesca and herself, we should ask this next.
I was like, my God, I was reading her mind.
Yeah,
I'm going to build up on her.
She's a mind reader. That's amazing.
Fun fact, I'm a little bit of an overachiever. I've been like that. I've been like that since I was little. You can blame my parents. It's just sort of the way it is. But I'll behave myself. I'll wait for you to ask me questions next time.
So Dara, let me build up on your previous thought. So if we think about real estate, indeed, as you were saying, we think about quite an old industry, right? So in Europe, we see a lot of resistance, especially at the beginning, towards innovation. And I'm talking about FinTech and financial institutions, first of all. Is the same in PropTech? I believe so, but can you tell us a bit more about that?
I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Any industry that is as old, and not even by number of years, but I'd like to use the term traditional, a traditional industry that is very used to doing things a certain way. It's where incumbent players feel very comfortable. And when incumbent players are successful and making a lot of money, they are resistant to people entering the market who will do things better than they do. So I think there's a natural sort of resistance there, which is, we are making money and we would like to continue to make money the way we always have. And there's also, I think, a lack of understanding. So I do think education plays a major role in it. And I won't even bring in the regulatory aspect yet. But in any industry, in any traditional industry, there will be resistance to change. You mentioned financial services. That took some time before, momentum really began to I think, to the point where, FinTech is where it is right now. The law is no different. Lawyers and legal practitioners and sort of the slow, painful growth of the legal tech markets, because, we've been around for a long time and we like the way we do things and we don't really want to change. And so those are just natural human tendencies, I think.
Yeah. And going back on the regulation side, which is actually your main focus, again, I'm talking about FinTech because naturally we work more with fintech companies and financial institutions. But what we see again in fintech, especially in Europe, is that a not homogeneous regulation across country sometimes is potentially impact on the scaling up of the startups. How is impacting that in PropTech? I mean, how are the startups behaving?
So that, first and foremost, in the United States, it really depends on what the PropTech does. There will be, depending on what sort of technology they're implementing, in sort of what lane. What are you raising money for real estate projects? Are you trying to use a token in some interesting way in some part of a real estate transaction? Are you building an app that has sensors to sense biometric data in commercial real estate property? Much of that, the laws and rules and the regulators that you have to answer to will very much be dependent on what it is you're doing. So I wish there was a one-size-all answer or like one authority, that there isn't, because nothing is ever simple, because then you wouldn't need people like me. And then how would I send my kids to college? So putting that to the, putting that to the side, it absolutely impacts the way a fintech or a regtech, proptech can raise money, how they can operate, and the level of risk that the organization will sort of be taking on to do what they want to do. If you are talking about tokenization, for example, in the United States, you have to worry about whether or not your tokens are going to be classified as securities, for example. And if that's the case, you're going to be answering to the Securities Exchange Commission. If you're talking about a platform to exchange tokens, you have to worry about the Internal Revenue Service, because you might have to pay taxes on those transactions. If you're talking about an application that is monitoring tenant data or temperatures or other biometric, you've got to worry about the Federal Trade Commission and all of the privacy laws and regulations at the federal and state level. So it very much depends on what you're doing. And each of those laws carry with them their own responsibilities and, more important, penalties, which make people very nervous and proceed with caution.
Dara, actually, what you just said, I had a question in mind and I thought it was a stupid one. But then, I hear you talking and it might make sense. Let me try it, okay? So, as maybe you know or you don't, but a few years ago at Swift, we did this Tribe thing, which is considered one of the pioneers of fintech. And back in, I believe, 2010, 2011, there was one of today's largest, actually, PropTech startups, led by, what I call a rock star CEO, Gillian Hellman, called Realty Mogul. Okay, so Realty Mogul is basically sort of a crowdfunding commercial real estate. Back then, everyone was like staring at this CEO and say, what the hell is she doing? And then all of a sudden, it picked up, got hundreds of millions of funding, and today is kind of like a role model, right? And this crowdfunding, though, started paradoxically first in the US, then in Europe, right? And in Europe, something that, was developed, I believe, more than in the US is everything around data. So companies like, Geofy, for example, or, companies that are using AI and data to evaluate properties, for example, or to figure out what is the best location for like a new commercial building or for a new business. So it seems like everything that is concerning, I want to say, financial services related to PropTech, starting in the US first. But it seems to me that everything that is, talking about trends related to data and AI applied to PropTech almost started in Europe first. Is that like an analysis that you would align with?
That's a good question.
I know, right? I thought so hard about it.
So you mentioned that you thought it would be a stupid question. Not a stupid question. I think it's a great question. I would have to say I don't have the same level of familiarity with the activity in Europe to basically say
Fair.
who did it first. All of that being, what I can tell you though is that the momentum that started in the US in all of these fields definitely slowed down a little bit. And part of that was, I think, political. Part of that was the ability to deal with the regulators and the consumer activist groups here in the United States in a way that people felt comfortable moving forward. We have sort of an alphabet soup regulatory framework in the United States. So I think while there might be a lot of innovation and excitement early on, the minute one of the regulators or one of the state activist attorneys general steps in and says, we have an issue with this, everyone slams the brakes on everything because you don't know if it's just going to be the one or if all other 49 states are going to follow suit. So it's a lot of stop and go. So I would agree with the notion that there was a lot of activity surrounding the crowdfunding and tokenization generally, both in PropTech and, you name it tech, which then naturally took a pause when the SEC finally raised their hand and said, you know what, we're going to take a position on this. And we think what you're doing is actually in violation of the securities laws. And then everyone sort of freaked out. And there's actually a ton of litigation right now based in New York on coin races gone bad from token holders. And they're very much styled like investor lawsuits under the Securities Exchange Act. So, no one knows how to screw things up like lawyers. I'm the first one to say that. but that's my take on that question. I hope that was that answer was on
great.
point.
It's great because since no, it is actually of course we can't be expert in in anything and in any part of the world. But the good thing is that you gave a great lookup in the US on the US side. And then the next two guests is going to be from Europe. So, it's almost like the second half of the question is going to be answered by the following. So it's just perfect, Dara.
Definitely. Dara, one last question before wrapping it up. I cannot mention what we are living now. So the COVID era is basically impacting us all startups, all companies, and so on. Actually, I was reading a recent report on PropTech Ventures, and it was actually saying that several segments of PropTech will experience a boost after the COVID is passing on. What do you think about that? What are you seeing also right now happening over there?
I would agree with that general sentiment for sure. The commercial real estate industry, especially right now, has had to adapt to very fast changing regulatory requirements regarding, people's physical environments as a result of increasing COVID-19 cases globally. So that's certainly true in the US as well. And the way that, buildings and real estate, offices, the way everything is owned and managed and the safety of tenants and then the safety of the employees of those tenants very much lends itself to some digital answers. There will certainly be creative opportunities. I think some of the flags that we have to be careful of are obviously privacy concerns. I think, privacy has really, as a result of the coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic, really become front and center about individuals' health data and whether or not we can share that, anonymize it, use it for the greater good. But it's really very much at odds with, GDPR, the laws that exist here in the United States, HIPAA, and other privacy laws. But at the same time, that data is going to be vitally important as we're able to sort of move back into, I hate the phrase new normal, so I'm not going to use it, into a more familiar work environment instead of us all sitting at home. But there's a lot of opportunity. The way in sensing and mobility, I think, smart everything, not having to touch things, all of that creates massive opportunity, particularly in the commercial real estate market, in my view.
Thank you, Dara. I think that, the more I listen to you, the more I believe that this should not be a one-off. We should build more bridges that talks about, the situation on the two sides of the ocean. And I really hope that this is like the first one of many more to come. Dara, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to be back. You just named the episode.
Thanks, Dara.
Thank you, Dara. Thank you so much. And stay tuned. Now going on a short break, and we'll be back soon. And it's a wrap.
FinTechStage builds innovation ecosystems. We engage incumbents, investors, entrepreneurs, technology partners, and regulators to build trusted and connected fintech tribes around the world. We firmly believe that innovation in financial services will improve people's lives. Through our immersive programs, we connect global industry experts with local financial services communities to explore, challenge, and solve important issues related to fintech, regtech, insurtech, artificial intelligence, identity, and financial inclusion. The good news is that we have done it before. InnoTribe was the first and largest fintech movement worldwide, and our founders were amongst its orchestrators. We build programs with a wise combination of formats, partnerships, and content. It is experience-based, tailor-made, and proven to deliver results. Visit us at FinTechStage.com or feel free to send an email to operations@FinTechStage.com for more information.
Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Europe. We are continuing our PropTech show today, and we change gears. So Dara told us about a US perspective, as a lawyer, how complicated it is to match regulation with innovation as far as PropTech is concerned. But now let's go back into a more specific Breaking Banks Europe material with two PropTech. One of them is actually a bit more than PropTech, but I don't want to ruin the surprise. But I would love to welcome Caroline Lamaud, CEO of Anaxago. Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And Federico Pomi, Federico, CEO of Fabrica.city. Ciao Fede, welcome to the show.
Ciao Matteo, thank you, and thank you for having me too.
And Francesca is, of course,
Back
still
again
with us. So a little anecdote before, just to decontract a little bit the ambience of the show. So we have a first. Caroline is the first guest ever to record 2 Breaking Banks shows in 2 days. So yesterday we recorded the Zoom in France, but as I was telling before, it was a podcast love at first sight. And I said, listen, now that I understand what Anaxago does, you have to, I hope that Federico won't hold it against me if he's going to share the scene, but I promise you guys will have enough space to talk. So since I mentioned with all the honors, Caroline, why don't you introduce yourself quickly, and then we'll talk about Anaxago specifically a little bit later.
Okay, so super quickly, my name is Caroline Lamaud. I'm one of the founder of Anaxago, as you said. We are a French investment platform, like a unique destination for private investors to pick smart financial investments. We offer a wide range of financial products from startup to real estate. And as it happens, we are the first French investor in PropTech, but we'll talk about that more later on. So we are half PropTech, half FinTech, investing in PropTech. I hope everyone is following.
We are so far. And Federico, fellow Italian, based in San Francisco. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matteo. So yeah, I'm Federico. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fabrica. And what we are building is essentially the new plumbing of a real estate industry. That's what we like to say. And what we do essentially is that we enable fully digital real estate operations. So when you want to change the ownership of your house or refinance your mortgage, you don't have to wait for 4 weeks, but you can do it in a couple of minutes online. That's what we do.
Great. So maybe, and as a fellow startupper, it is only fair to give the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what you do. And let's maybe stay with Federico for a little while. So Fabrica started, tell our auditors what Fabrica does, but also what bigger problem, is potentially Fabrica attacking to, because by saying this, you will also describe one of the biggest challenges of PropTech, which is how to free all these dusty boxes full of papers and time spent in useless tasks that guys like you are optimizing.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you my story first. The story is that I moved to San Francisco from Italy 5 years ago. And soon after moving here, I decided to buy a house. So I went through the process and I was shocked by what's the process like and how old-fashioned it is and how slow and based on paperwork and fingerprints and rubber stamps. It's something that I wasn't expecting from the Silicon Valley. I was expecting something completely different. And it was an annoyance, but then I started looking into it and I discovered that it's like actually a huge industry in the US. Like changing the ownership of a house, it's something that is done, performed typically by title companies. The title industry in the US, it's a $25 billion industry, and it's basically controlled by 4 large companies. So I started looking into it, and the technology that we have today can solve that problem in a completely different way. And so we started building a company to fix that problem. So that's the short story.
Good. Thanks, Federico. Back to Caroline. Then you can tell us a bit more about your company, Anaxago. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Perfectly. I'm amazed because even French people have some difficulties, pronouncing the name. It's Greek.
Tell us also about the name. Yeah, I'm curious about it.
Okay, so when we had to choose the name of the company, the 3 of us who were 3 founders offered a few different options. And I'm a huge fan of ancient Greek. I studied it as an adolescent, and I decided to go for this name, Anaxago. It's a derivative from the philosopher Anaxago, who was the first one to say that the world is advancing because human people are always innovating. And he had this mantra saying that you have to help the one who starts. So when we launched Anaxago as a equity crowdfunding company for startup, we felt like that was the perfect name. So we kept it.
That's quite nice. And what Anaxago is doing?
So we are, as I said earlier, we're an investment platform. What we do basically is select investment opportunities. We have a wide range of financial products. We offer to invest in startups and directly into real estate. We came to PropTech investment as an evidence. As I said, we started as an equity crowdfunding platform for startups, funding companies in a wide range of sectors. I mean, we funded companies in the heavy industry, websites. I think we even funded dating network. So very wide. And then we started offering real estate development investment opportunity, thus getting very close to the needs of real estate professionals and companies. At the time, back in 2014, real estate was almost the last sector waiting to be disrupted in Europe. I mean, at least in France. At the same time, startups investing became highly competitive with money flowing from basically everywhere. So we had to rethink our model. We didn't want to stop investing in startups, even though it's less than 30% of our investments, but it's strongly imprinted in our DNA. So we decided to specialize, to invest only in the fields where we could be experts. So we felt like property tech was the perfect area. We only pick companies when we have an ability to enable them to implement their products or services within the real estate industry in France, thanks to our connections there. It's also, it's a great way for us to kind of test the relevance of a business to the real estate industry. And every year we provide over 100 B2B leads to our PropTech companies, leading them to accelerate their commercial development by 12 months at least.
Actually, sorry, a build-up question, because I must say that I'm a super spoiled, internet user. So I went to Anaxago since I know you, like 2 days ago, right? and I try to, of course, there is a limited interaction that you can have with the website if you don't register, etc., etc. But it seems like indeed a galaxy of opportunity for like a personal investment, which is from But what I didn't get just yet is the part that is almost a B2B part. It was clear the B2C part, right?
Yeah.
But the B2B a little bit less. Can you explain a little bit better? And then I have a symmetric question to Federico afterwards.
You're right. It doesn't show on the website because we don't talk about it. It's something that we do on the side for the startups we invest in. We feel like it's our role as an investor, also for the private investors who decided to pledge on the companies we selected, that we have this role of companionship, being able to find them like business solutions. It doesn't show in a way, but that's the particular role of the crowdfunding equity platform, the investment platform. We select opportunities, we follow them, and we need to make sure they're a success because we want our private investors to make money out of their investments. But we should show that on the website.
I get it. And, this is actually great because I was saying, after Dara's intervention earlier, we were saying, both Francesca and I, that this is actually very complementary because in between you and Federico, we got really almost a 365 degrees sort of prospect on what are the opportunities into the PropTech world. So back to Federico. Fede, tell us a little bit two things. One, and by the way, should I say a disclaimer? I'm also an advisor to Fabrica and an investor,
Great.
and so it's just because
it's great.
To make this clear. So I know a little bit, not only the team, and I love them, but also the mission they're on. So tell a little bit how is the market structured, the few players that are actually sharing, what is it, a couple of $1 billion market in the US? But most importantly, would this work in Europe? Because I'm pretty sure that, coming from this side of the ocean, you must have sort of spotted the same inefficiencies, right, Fede?
Matteo, that's such an interesting question. And so, yes, well, first of all, let me say that the market is not a couple of billion, but $25 billion in the US alone. And it's, I guess it's like 89 or 90% of the market is controlled by four companies.
That was the part that I got it right.
Yes. And the other interesting thing to say is that people think of the US as a whole country, especially when you come from abroad. But the reality is that fragmentation in the country is extreme. So there are different states, and each state has different rules and different regulation. And within each state, there are different counties. So when you're talking about land rights or property rights, you're really talking about like very specific regulations and processes that are in place. So just to give you a number, there are over 3,000 counties in the US, and each county is responsible of recording title transfer for the county. So, and each county uses a different system. And sometimes we are talking about like hundreds of different software. So clearly that is an extremely complex problem, because when you want to solve it at a national level, you need to understand how each state and county works. And you need to find a way to retrofit the existing system to build something that can scale at a national level. And since we are doing that for the US, we are facing that fragmentation every single day. We are on the right path to do that in other countries after that, because essentially we have built a solution that allows us to adapt or to think of each country as a plugin that we can put into the system and support that country. And there are clearly amazing opportunities in Europe, but even farther, like you can look at Africa, and they have like a huge issues with property rights, and fixing it really has a much bigger impact that one could see in the small specific region that we are targeting today.
So Federico, today I still have this number in my head, and you probably will correct it, but there are 600,000 pieces of lands that are changing sort of owner every year in the US, something like that. Is that number roughly correct?
Yeah, that's closer. So there are like over 1 million transactions in the land space per year in the US. So we're talking about plots of land, not residential. So
exactly.
Every year, 1 million transactions in the land space. And that's exactly the first segment of the market that we are targeting with Fabrica. So
Exactly.
today our product is a very simple and easy tool for people who buy and sell small plots of land, and they can do it fully online. So we're talking about land that it's like sometimes it's worth like $2,000 or $5,000. So the value is very little, but it's a very active community. You can find people buying and selling lands on forum, podcasts. Some of them are literally influencers in their community. And the interesting thing is that they have done that with a traditional system using deeds and paperwork, and we enable them to do it fully online. So in a sense, we're like a Venmo of land, if you want. So they can send property ownership directly online with just a link.
And by the way, there is also, you mentioned property rights, right? Which sounds, trivial in the developed world, but, having worked for or invested with Omidyar Network before, Omidyar Network, which is actually based very close to where you are, Federico, is the founder of eBay. They are one of the few funds on earth that invest in property rights startups because there are 2 billion people without any record of their lands. And this is and of course, this inequality, this gap, doesn't allow them to, sell, in a proper way their land, to sort of demonstrate their assets. When they die, they don't know what to do with it, etc., etc. So I think that this is sort of a no-brainer space where technology would help greatly.
100% agree. Obviously, I really think it's an amazing opportunity. And keep in mind that I think that while we are fixing something for the developed world, we are fixing the same problem that there is like in other countries. So what you see as a problem is showing your property rights in Kenya, for example. It has a very similar solution that can be used to improve the processes that are in the developed countries. So, for example, in the US. So, what we are doing here can be used everywhere, and that's very powerful. So, clearly, for countries such as Kenya, like changing how property rights are managed and transferred is something like crucial for the economy. But that is also an incredible, powerful tool for developed countries such as the US or any country in Europe to speed up transactions, to create more liquidity in the market and make it work better.
Thanks, Federico. And now going back again to Caroline and on the crowdfunding platform. Right now in Europe, we see a lot of crowdfunding platform growing up in different kind of sectors, PropTech being one of them, but not only. And also the format that they have, it's quite spreading, like equity crowdfunding, lending crowdfunding. We have different types, a lot of them. Which trends do you see coming in the future around your sector? And also, I'm quite curious in understanding more how you select your projects, because I really think that is quite a crucial part of your job. I was also quite curious about all the sustainable kind of investments you are putting on the platform, renewable energies, and so on. Tell us a bit more about these kind of trends and how do you see the future of crowdfunding platforms?
Okay, so first question about the tendency of crowdfunding platform to grow and pop kind of everywhere. I have this feeling that in France, we are entering a new era. For a few years, we had more than 200 crowdfunding platforms in France, like very different aspects of the funding industry with all different types of crowdfunding, donation-based, lending-based, equity-based. What we saw in the past 18 months was concentration of the market. The smallest platforms, the one who couldn't find their model, meaning that they weren't raising enough funds to sustain the company, like collecting enough funds, were really started to close down. Some of them were bought out by other platforms, but the amount of platform existing in France is slightly decreasing, has been really decreasing in the past 18 months. My feeling is, as a platform, is that being specialized in one area of investment is kind of reductive. Because as investment platform, we kind of offer investment that are really risky, being startups or high yield real estate investments. Yeah. So we are kind of, that's something that really invested retail investors would do. but that's not really general. So to grow, either you go pan-European, so you enter other countries and you develop your model there. So that's the case of one platform in France. Or you decide to go deeper into your market. And that's what Anaxago decided to do. Meaning that first we were an investment platform. We want to become a wealth management platform, a place where you can find advice and hold investment opportunities you could want. So some of them will be produced by Anaxago, like selecting startup companies, selecting real estate deals, but other would be financial products. We'll find performance, we find have a positive impact, and that are relevant to the portfolio of a retail investor. So, well, my feeling about the crowdfunding industry is that it's slightly moving towards like more meaningful, more implemented models. So that was the first question. Second question was how we select investment opportunities, right?
Yeah, it's also like I really think that your base of investor is going to be much more following you, also depending on your selecting criteria, on the startup you put on the platform. So it's sort of trust game,
Exactly. You got it so right. That's something that some of the investment platform funders completely forgot, that what we are at heart is an investor. And if you are an investor, you need to make the right decisions when you pick a company. So you can make mistakes. That's almost inevitable. Yeah. But we go for companies that in the startup area, as I said, we go for companies that we are able to help build up their business. We are looking, of course, at the team. We are also looking at the assets they're building. When I look at a company, I see an asset. An asset can be a technology, can be a service, can be a brand, can be a community, it can be anything. It's something that's going to be worth money for someone someday. So that's something we're really looking at. And then we're looking at the market size, of course. And also, as I said, the team, investing in a company is like getting married. So I have to make sure that I'm willing to get married with all of those people.
You couldn't say it better. Yes, indeed.
And so I didn't marry the 200 guys at the end of the 200 companies we funded. But that would be how we make a decision. And for the real estate part, we go for the classic decision about commercialization, administrative, and financial risk. It's a little more easier to select.
I actually have a question for both of you guys, which is when I think of who are your, the type of profiles that come to your platform, and also on one side, and maybe let's start with Federico. By the way, is Fabrica.land, is not Fabrica.city, so Fabrica.land. But we will ask you at the end how we can reach out to you guys, so get the opportunity. Yeah, we all get the opportunity to get it right, because Federico, when I think of one of the users of your platform, do I need to be particularly tech savvy, or how could you make the tech behind the platform sort of almost invisible to the users, right? Because it even psychologically speaking, from a few days, weeks, paper signed, moving, going to buy car to offices to do everything online, it is almost too good to be true, right? So how is the education part of the clients? And actually, same question, copy paste to Caroline afterwards, because I want to become, if you improve your website a little bit and make it clear after 2 minutes, an investor in your platform. I would love to, okay? But I am maybe more aware, of this type of alternative investment. So how eccentric, do I need to be today, in your opinion, to access this type of investment? Federico first.
So it's a good question, Matteo. The reality is that many people are ready for that. So we already do incredible and pretty expensive investments as persons every single day. When you buy stocks online, when you can even buy a car online nowadays. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to buy a plot of land or an investment in a real estate opportunity in the very same way. we use Wealthfront, we use all the tools in the fintech space that you know very well. And so it's not about the size of investment. And I think that it's more of a matter of like habits and getting people to trust the system. So it's all about like telling them in a very simple way what we do, how we do it, and they're fine and they love how simple the system is. At the end of the day, it's like using Amazon. You look at a product and you decide to buy it and you click on buy now, and that's it. And it should be the same for real estate, and that's what we do.
Now is it possible to buy land through Fabrica in like anywhere in the US, or you started with certain region, like a certain pilot? Just in case that there are, I don't know, if the Californian buyers that are listening to us, they can all do that.
So the short answer is currently we support California, but next month we'll be supporting 5 more states. So the long answer is that Dara touched the point very well. So it's a lot about regulation and getting the license to be able to perform transaction in several states. And we have a roadmap to support all the 50 states in the US over the next year. Great
to know. Caroline, do you want me to like remind you the question, or it goes a little bit long, or you still
It's okay. I got it. I listened very closely. It's funny that you asked that question because Anaxago in France, we are known for not being known, meaning that we don't advertise. The only way you can find us is that you hear about us by word of mouth, by someone who is recommending us, or because we are quite present in the press. It's been the same way since we launched the company back in 2012. We decided that as we were building a trust company, like as Francesca said earlier, we are really building on trust, and we wanted to be able. That's the shiny story. We wanted to bring people only through word of mouth. The not so shiny story is that I don't know a thing about digital marketing, and we didn't have anyone to work on that for us at that time. So, but it worked out quite well because we have more than 100,000 members and invested more than, I think, 230 millions. So we like it. One of my investors said to me the other day that we were the best kept secret in France, because we offer high performance with a very good investment products. So if you want to become a client to Anaxago, you need to be fed up with your banks. You need to be very disappointed in the way your investments are working for you. And you just need to go and say, how can I invest my money smartly to make the economy grow and also have some performance? And then you can become a client.
Let me flatter your ego a little bit. Could you please share the funding story of Anaxago with our auditors? How many billions have you raised?
None. We are the proudly least funded fintech in France. We raised exactly. So I checked last night after we talked, and we raised 1.5 million on our own platform in July 2014. But the company had always been profitable since year one, and we kept it that way since then. So
that's why Caroline is called the French rock stars, and
yes.
she's in the board. She's in the board of the French FinTech Association, and everyone says, "You don't know Caroline, come on." And I feel ashamed. That's why all of a sudden we are inviting her in 2 podcasts in 2 days. It's sort
and more to come.
Exactly to make it up.
So guys, one very last question to wrap up this episode. And since Matteo wants to be always the good guy, I'm the one every time that has to ask the question about COVID-19 and how your business is facing this period. So which changes have you seen lately? How are you going to see the coming months? Caroline,
and please, Caroline, reassure me that it's okay, because if I want to start investing during COVID, I want to be reinsured, okay?
Well, to be honest, during the confinement period between mid-March and mid-May, we decided not to be selling anything. we kind of realized that we were trying to adapt to a new reality that was really hard on us as entrepreneurs, as human beings, as a couple. It was really tough. And we decided that we felt like everyone was living through the same thing. So we decided not to be pushy or not to be selling anything. And we remain in link with our customers through a newsletter telling about different things about investment, but not selling anything. So that was 2 very low months. And we were counting on the months of June to see if people were kind of, waiting for things to settle down to start investing again. But it seems like we're going to eat the 10 million invested, like 11 million invested in June, which is a good ratio for the months of June. It's almost what we invested in the last quarter of 2019 in September, for instance. So I'm quite positive that people are back in the investing game. Would you have asked me this question like 4 weeks ago? I wouldn't have the answer. But I feel people are back. It's good.
Good to hear that. Federico, what are you telling us?
So 2 different things happen on our side. The first one is that transaction with the traditional process in some places were stuck because they rely upon like county clerks and manual paper records and people were not going to the offices. So transactions were not working while we were up and running since the whole process is fully digital. So we do not rely upon the traditional process. So everything is up and running. And the second thing that is extremely interesting, I think, from a sociological perspective, is that a lot of people started complaining about cities and started looking at rural lands. So people are saying, I want to spend more time outside of a city, want to spend more time with my family in the countryside for obvious reasons. And that has had an impact on the sales of land, of rural land. So all of our customers basically are sold out of their properties because they are selling plots of land outside of cities like they've never done before.
Well, it looks like there are more than some positive notes. And I was actually suspecting that this forced digital leapfrog, especially for businesses that, to keep going, like the land registry typically was to go online. That's typically one of the sectors where technology helped a lot, some of the businesses to stay alive simply. So, that's good. I mean, we're really glad to hear. So I think that we are already sort of over time, but the discussion was really interesting. I enjoyed very much. Thank you, Caroline and Federico. And since the day before yesterday, we have a new way to wrapping up. So Caroline and Federico, in 30 seconds, if they want to join you, your website, LinkedIn. Federico, how do people know about Fabrica?
Just go to our website. It's Fabrica.land. You can learn about the product that we offer to land buyer and seller and more about the companies and what we are going to support over the next years.
Thank you. Caroline?
Well, same thing for us. You should go to our website. It's www.anaxago.com. And once we make the changes Matteo wants, you'll be able to find anything you want.
Thank you. You're too kind to me. Thank you very much. Guys, that's Breaking Banks Europe PropTech show. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, Francesca, for co-hosting with me today.
Ciao, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTechStage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.